Hey friends. I have had an interesting couple days. I've had something come up that sort of speaks to like all of life and at the same time some really narrow channels of my current circumstances. Like, for example, my working with Annalise on music right now, which is a new journey for her and for us, for me. And as with virtually everything that I undertake, there's a very consistent self-examination process that, at least for someone like me, it's kind of inevitable. I'm just constantly self-examining in that way. It's something that I suspect I have learned to do, but at this point it doesn't feel like something I do on purpose. It's just part of everything I do. And I think what that in and of itself shows something up for me, in that it just points to a natural, or I don't know if natural is the right word, but it points to a very ingrained habit of self-reflection, self-examination, self-criticism sometimes, but not always. The point of self-examination is not always to be critical. And it dovetails, funny enough, I happen to be reading Ibram Kendi's book right now called How to Be an Anti-Racist. And among the just incredible volume of tremendous insights he offers, and sort of really clear distillations of what some of these issues are and how they've historically been defined and perceived, and how that's changing, and what he kind of offers as a new perspective throughout the book. He is relentlessly self-examining and reevaluating his position over the years of his life. And now I'm kind of getting towards the end of the book, and he talks very explicitly about that process and about that being an incredibly important feature of anybody who wants to know the truth, who wants to really make change and create a better world. We have to be as critical and as relentlessly reevaluating our own position as we are of everyone else's position who we might want to engage with in a conversation, maybe modify their perspective. We need to be equally critical of our own perspective. And that's something that felt very, when I it's very in evidence throughout the book that that's how he thinks. And when he then kind of starts to come out and say it towards the end of the book, it was really I was like, yep, that sounds about right. It just affirmed for me something that's very that I also think is really important, incredibly important, on the whether this is in the realm of philosophical thought or in the domain of political thought. Self-examination is or in parenting, like I said, where I kind of started. And what that has to go hand in hand with to some extent, is a corresponding trust in ourselves. And God knows I'm familiar with how self-examination can actually, if we don't apply it kind of consciously, it can become a force that chips away at our trust in ourselves. Because we're sort of saying in that self-evaluation process, we're on the lookout for where we might be mistaken, for which of our assumptions might not be reliable. We're questioning everything all the time. And it is absolutely my experience that doing that leads to a more refined, more nuanced, more measured, more true grasp of any issue. We get closer and closer to the truth. Now, of course, if you study enough philosophy, you'll kind of get to the part where it becomes clear that ultimate truth, probably not a thing. or if it is a thing, it's irrelevant to humans, because humans are conditioned. We are conditioned. We have a set of circumstances. We don't enter the world as objective consciousness. We enter the world with bodies and minds and a planet that we live on, and relationships and genders and all kinds of things that create conditions for us. So what's ultimately true is actually it's ultimately of less utility than understanding relational truth. But as this pertains to our own kind of capacity to trust ourselves, it's definitely my experience that over the long throw, this process leads to a more reliable sense of self, and therefore a greater, deeper trust in ourselves. But in the short term, and or at any moment in that process, it can happen that we are destabilizing something we rely on as an assumption, or not an assumption, but an established principle or an established pillar of something solid. We think we can stand on this knowledge, where we may destabilize something and all of a sudden find ourselves a little unmoored or a little bit shaky until we can complete that process of examination and decide where we now stably orient, whether we get a new fixed point, or whether that fixed point goes away, so we rely on other fixed points for our stability. As that happens, as we tinker with stuff, there are going to be many moments of doubt, many moments of self-doubt, because something we've held true all along, all of a sudden, turns out it might not be true. Or a conviction that we've really felt was worth championing and worth fighting for, or we might decide, I don't feel that anymore. And furthermore, my sort of unself-conscious defense of it all along makes me a little, makes me cringe now. That's a process that's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. That's why I've done, if you've seen my other posts, I've done many posts on lean into the cringe. That cringy feeling is not necessarily a bad thing. That cringy feeling can mean we're turning over a new leaf in our consciousness, and we're letting go of something that we don't need to hold on to anymore. So, but my point with all of this is, we still have to find a way to trust ourselves sort of throughout. We can't be coming in and out of trusting ourselves, because then our action becomes frenetic. We don't know whether we feel like we can't act, or we can't decide, or we can't move in a direction, because what if nothing I know, what if nothing I think actually is right? What if I'm totally unreliable? What if everything I think is unreliable? What if everything I hold true is unreliable? And the reason why this is coming up for me is because I've had some moments of questioning my approach with Annalise, teaching her, working with her in music, yes, practicing with her, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity to look at that a little bit and to reevaluate what's going on there, right? How I'm going about it, see if there are things I might want to modify. And I have to trust myself. I have to trust that I am the father of this child. She's here in my life and Katie's life for a reason. She came to us. She's meant to receive this from me, even if part of that process is my growth in the way that I relate to her. She's still on board for the ride of whatever my growth is as it relates to her and her ongoing growth and evolution. So trusting that I can make mistakes and still trust myself. I can question my approach and still trust myself. And that ultimately there's a level on which I'm communicating not just the content of what I do right and what I do wrong, but I'm communicating a level of self-trust. And if I can live in that, then I will impart that. That's what I will give. That will be the psychic water that we're swimming in together. So even as I deconstruct every thought and every move and every, detail, or whether it's a detail or a kind of pillar, I can still communicate a self-trust throughout all that. Feels like a balancing act sometimes, but I think ultimately they're the same thing. Ultimately that trust can't really exist unless we're going through the examination process. It can't, trust is not a static thing. It's not like, now I trust myself and I trust myself as I am now, and that's what I trust. Because then as soon as I question or change, now I'm hedged against making any necessary refinements or changes to my own position, my own perspective, my own thoughts, my own approach. Because I trust what I know now. Well, unfortunately, that's not how it works. Trust evolves too. Trust is an evolving experience. Whether we trust someone else, that's true in relational trust, and it's true in self-trust. So I'm piecing these two things together, and I'm talking my way, I think, to a sense of what's going on kind of underneath in a process that is very powerful. When you start looking at how you're parenting your child, you want to do the best possible job you possibly can. It feels big as I start to examine that. It feels big. It feels like there's a lot at stake. But I need to be able to trust myself even when there's a lot at stake throughout. So, yeah. That's where I've gotten to today. Thanks for watching. I love you. Appreciate you. Have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow.